Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Behind the Docks. Today we have the pleasure of hosting Thomas from Regal Logistics. Thank you so much for joining us today, Thomas.
Thank you so much for having us.
I am so excited for the viewers and for myself to get to know you and Regal. So for those who've never heard of Regal, can you tell me a little bit about what you guys do and just how the company started?
Absolutely. Well, again, like I said, thanks for having us. We're a second generation family owned 3PL. We've been doing this since 1970. So 55 years strong.
Wow.
And what we're best known for is our retail compliance, right? One of our registered trademarks is really focused on port to sale, right? So really, if you're a brand or if you're a reseller, or even a retailer for that much, we basically help you, start to grave, right? Cradle to grave. From the port, container comes in to the shelf where things are sold. That's really what our focus on, or kind of our niche or bread and butter on the retail side. And like I said, we're looking forward to another 55 years, right?
That's so exciting. 55 years. Wow, that's a huge milestone. You guys definitely should be really proud of that. Obviously, you guys have built a really strong reputation over the years. What do you think has been the key to your success in getting you guys to 55 years?
I think a lot has to do with, I'm not saying I think, but I know it's actually caring, right? Caring about our customers, right? Following that DNA that's molded from first generation to second generation to kind of the high level of expectation, it is that care factor, right? I think, and I will get into this a little bit later, but being on this side of the fence as a service provider versus being a brand and a wholesaler in former life, that care about that customer that you're serving really is rooted in what you do. And so I think that what's made us successful is it's beyond the transaction, right? It's beyond that delivery. It's beyond that package. It's the level of effort that was put into it, right? And so I think the care factor, and I don't want to sound cliche because a lot of people can say that, but I've been doing this for 25 some odd years, and really feel it every single day.
Wow, that's amazing. I'd love to know, obviously, because you guys do a lot, what industries are the best fit for Regal?
For us, it's going to be retail, right? Retail industries, there's a couple different channels that a lot of viewers can take a look at, and whether it's insert name here, right? Yeah, apparel, different types of clothing, toys, games, beverages, insert type of channel here, but it's basically anything that's going to be sold into retail, and that could either be a B2B scenario where we're fulfilling by Amazon, or fulfillment by Walmart, or fulfillment by insert retailer here. But also on the flip side to that, now as we see a boost in Omnichannel, a lot of the direct-to-consumer as well, right? A lot of things with Wayfair and TikTok Shop and everyone doing the dropship programs to their customers. It's a little bit of everything. But, I mentioned those. But again, for what we see is where we really kind of hit our bread and butter is on the retail side, retail compliance, because we've been doing it for 55 years. There's no secret sauce other than making sure that, you're meeting the expectations of what the customer requires.
100%. You guys offer a lot of value-added services. Which ones are becoming the most popular right now with all these retail brands?
That's a good question, and that came up in a conversation earlier today, right? You can talk about, maybe there's three different pathways, right? Some of the value-added services that we see that are increasing are, and I'm going to go back to, pre-COVID, 5-6 years ago, when it was like collaboration city, right? All these collabs and people working together. And that's starting to resurface from we'll call it like a kidding standpoint, right? You got so-and-so celebrity working with so-and-so brand, and you get co-branding and collaboration, and you have, we'll call it one widget of this person, this company, another widget here, combining those together. So I don't want to say like a gift box, more of a kit, right? Based off of what's going to be required for a retail floor, right? A lot of retailers, they have shippers that go into the locations, right? A lot of the big boxes, we're 123 days up until Christmas, if anyone was counting, about 20 weeks. And that's where most of the product that's coming in on the waters now is going to be the value add service kits to either build these bundle kits or displays that are just ready to go, right? As it hits the dock, take off the box, you got your shoppable display that's even price tagged and ready to go. That's what we're seeing from a value added side. A lot more requests coming in, and then most recently on the truckage side, trucking side, we also have a brokerage called AppGetWay, and our service brokerage. A lot more people are shipping less of the full truckload volume. It's more LTL, right? It's kind of just in time as you need it. So, we've been able to market that as well and provide that as a service based off of kind of the buying power that we have. So on the warehouse fulfillment side, more compliance around kitting and value-added services. But I would also say that even on the logistics side, that's a value-added service too, because a lot of brands, don't have that person in-house that can go rate shop for them. So, it's a lot of people can say that you can be like everything to everyone, or you can be a little bit of everything to everyone. But I think the ones that are doing it right, and there's a lot of good operators out there, right? Not just us, right? A lot of people are working hard, so I don't want to discount that. But if you focus on being really good at what you do, that's going to be what's consistent and kind of repeatable, right?
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned omnichannel. Obviously, omnichannel fulfillment has become the standard now. What challenges do you find brands are facing as they try to serve multiple sales channels?
This is going to sound kind of nuanced and maybe just against the grain a little bit, but I think some of the challenges are with new brands coming on board, knowing how to differentiate the two, right? And a lot of that goes back to similar routing guides or SOPs that you have in place, right? And that's where we'll come into play, right? Trying to be that expert for them and that consultant, hey, how they're selling and fulfilling to Amazon or fulfill that merchant or into Walmart or insert name here, right? Just referencing those since those are public domain names. But helping them understand that, hey, in order to ship this thing here and it's going to go to a warehouse for fulfillment, you've got to do it one way. If it's going to a big box retailer, it's going to be going this way. But if it's going to be drop shipped or if it's going to be omnichannel fulfilled to a consumer, there's different rules, right? There's different tracking. And so I think a lot of that, and it's not really a challenge, but what's going to change and be that point of difference is those operators that understand all those level of inputs that the customer does just to make that sale, right? Because it's not just, hey, this is Wear Match, right? If you guys came out with your line of apparel and you guys got a pretty cool logo and journey, by the way, right? If you're selling these hats and you're going to sell them at every airport across North America, and then somebody wants to drop ship it and send it to their house in Tacoma, right? It's a different transaction, right? And so I think a lot of some of the challenges that come with omnichannel is that more and more people want to get into it, right? You got TikTok shop, right? That's huge right now. You got Temu, right? You've got everything, that's coming, and we'd be foolish to think that there's not going to be something behind it in the next year or two. So it's just being ready to anticipate that, and helping to educate our customers on how to do whatever it is you're trying to do.
And obviously you guys touch like a lot of different types of products in the retail space. So how do you guys help customers maintain inventory accuracy across wholesale, retail, e-commerce? How do you guys do it on your end?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with inventory. Like inventory accuracy is key, right? I just did a survey amongst our leadership team. It was last week, and taking a look at how our organization is structured and the warehouse managers and that level of accountability and between the people, 8 or 9 people that we worked on, and everyone's a key player, but looking at these that are more on the strategy side, you're 250 plus years of combined experience, right? And that is somewhat expected, right? With a company that's been around for 55 years, right? But it's also not the norm, right? And it all starts with inventory, right? And we have a lot of investment in technology and AI, a lot of proprietary tools that we use with the developers that are ours, that work for us, that are actually employees. And we have a system called Regal Command. And within Regal Command, any single customer can go in, take a look at their inventory, identify what they have, And it all starts with that one thing, right? You can't go into, you're in Quebec and you're in Canada, so we'll say you can't go to Tim Hortons and go, have a $100 bill to go in there to pay for your cup of coffee, and the register says, hey, they're supposed to have enough change for 50, right? And they only give you 49 because they're off, right? It's inventory accuracy, right? It's going to make or break a brand, right? And I will say that that's very important going back to the omni-channel side, right? You and I, we're on Amazon or TikTok Shop, and we want to buy one thing that says, hey, there's 3 left, right? Well, I ordered it. The site said there's 3 left, right? But when I go to fulfill my order, getting a notice from the retailer that, hey, we can't fulfill this because our inventory is off, like, that's just unacceptable.
Yeah.
Right. It affects not only your brand, but just the reputation and credibility. So outside of cycle counting, outside of inventory checks, outside of different technology, whether it be RF scanning or check digit scanning or different type of AI solutions that are out there with robotics to do actual inventory checks, inventory is key. And we do take pride in our Regal Command because it's a custom portal that we own and operate, and it's shared with our customer, right? And our customers are able to input their orders, send over their instructions, pick, pack, and ship, interact with a representative, if that's how they operate. It's just another ways of working, but it all starts and ends with inventory. And the moment inventory is out of whack or it's off, then you lose it from there, right? It's very hard to recover. So
I love that. I think that that's so important, and I don't think that that's highlighted enough. I think that some people they're like, oh, it's just 1 SKU off, 2 SKUs off, but a few of that happening over time, eventually it definitely does tarnish the image, and you definitely don't want that falling on you either. So I think that that's amazing that you guys definitely put a lot of priority on that. I think it's something that's very hard to do too, especially with the amount of SKUs that you guys likely deal with. So honestly, kudos to you guys for that, and it's probably one of the many things that shape why you guys have been around for 55 years. Touching on the point of 55 years, clearly you guys have dealt with a lot of different economic global struggles that everyone else has dealt with. I know that you guys deal with a lot of retail clients, so obviously there's a lot of things coming by boats or a lot of things that might be affected by what's going on currently, because there's always something happening in our industry. But with everything happening with the reshoring and the tariffs, all other global uncertainty, like, what conversations are you having most often with customers, and how are you dealing with what's happening?
yeah, I mean, change is change, right? We live and work and support an environment that's constantly changing every day, right? Change is constant, right? There's no doubts about that. The biggest thing, and I'm going to go back, I'm not going to play buzzword bingo here, but inventory, right? Inventory is key, right? And it's being able to take our reporting, take and use the AI tools that we use within Regal Command, and help provide recommendations to our customers during scheduled business reviews. We call them SBRs, right? Based off the customer schedule. And it's being able to kind of look ahead. And if customers are ordering at a higher rate than they've done in the past, or let's just say they're multiple year customers, and we can take a look back at the last 13 weeks versus the last 26 weeks versus the last 2-3 years, then we can see what the trend line looks like, right? If something is out of line, or there's something that's causal, then you're going to see these spikes, these valleys, right? Those are the outliers, right? And those typically are things that we've seen in the first part of this year, late part of last year, with tariffs and just some of the uncertainties, right? But with that, it's inventory planning, right? It's being able to have your scheduled business review. And let's be honest, right? A lot of the brands and a lot of the people that are watching this and the other like shared service providers that work in the space, who some would say are competitors, right? We're all in this ecosystem, right? And so it just takes, a couple warehouses to have inventory off, and then it just kind of affects everything, right? If you think about it, because think about inventory accuracy being off because you have a shipment coming in from Southeast Asia, and somebody orders something because an inventory report somewhere says, hey, we're short and we need 1,000 more widgets. And then now that's 2 more containers, and those 2 more containers take up space on a vessel. And now the booking for the next company's, 4 weeks away, and it just affects the whole ecosystem. Like, it's everyone's responsibility to have inventory accurate, right? at all locations, and that is key. So kind of going back to that first question is there is uncertainty around tariffs. There's still a level of uncertainty now, but being able to make sure that you can help your customer plan ahead, right? That this, I'm not a shirt and a tie, right? I started in this industry as a truck driver, right? Working in warehouses. I get it, right? And so, being a little rougher on the edges, a lot of us here were former operators, right? That actually ran buildings. And one of the things that my grandfather instilled into me, and even ownership of the company, which is where there's some alignment, is that it's, 7 Ps, right? I think we've all heard it, but it's, prior proper planning. It prevents piss poor performance, right? And if you can plan, right, you can stay ahead. And so not only is that the case for us as a 3PL service provider or LSP, whatever acronym you want to use, part of what we do is help our customers plan, right? And that's on the warehouse side, and that's on the fulfillment side. And the same could be true on the trucking side, on the logistics side, right? I mentioned that we're 120 days or 20 weeks away from Christmas, right? If you don't have stuff on water now, right, you're going to be late to the game, right? Mm-hmm. Because we're in the summer, we got back to school. It's those brands and those sellers that get their space on the floor now and get it secured for fall, and then again for winter, for the holidays that are winning. So kind of just to summarize, it goes back to inventory, right? It's helping our customers understand that, hey, you have spikes in volume because of whatever world event that might have happened, or tariff, or whatever the case. Being able to adjust to that is one thing, but being able to help them think about, hey, your inventory increased X% because of this. Is there a reason why, right? Mm-hmm. I think that most service providers, I'm not going to say most, but I think there's a lot of service providers out there that don't ask those questions because a lot of are based on the transaction, right? Mm-hmm. And that goes back to the whole, the care factor, right? You care about your customers, you care about the business, what's going to make them successful. If you're their set of eyes and ears, in addition to being their service provider, you can help them get ahead of situations because in most cases they're not here. They're either here not in the States because they're from another region, or they're in a different part of the country, which is why they're using you kind of where you are. So you owe it to your customer to be their eyes and ears. And that's where technology comes into play. And again, all that starts with inventory, right? That's why that's so important.
You said so many things, and I have so many questions in my head now because wow, my logistics brain is I don't even know where to go. Truck driving, that is a really cool story. My dad was actually a truck driver. I have so much respect for truck drivers. I don't think people understand how hard it is and just everything that goes into it. I think that that's such an amazing thing that you had that experience that you can now take into your career in logistics now. What do you find was the biggest benefit from working on that end of the logistics to what you do now? How has that correlated and helped you?
I think that, there's people talk about perspective and perception, right? Perception is what you hear or think through the eyes of someone else, right? Perspective is what you know from your lens, right? Again, being a truck driver, right, by trade, you see different things, right? You know how the receiving dock works. You know how the shipping docks works. You can be relatable to the people that you're talking to, right? You know what a standard GMA is. You know what a Class A, Class B is. You know different sets of or types of lingo, right? And not to say that that's a secret sauce, but being able to relate to your customers, and then the customers that are their end users at every step of the way. I think the thing that's helped me personally, and I'll say most of the people that work within our organization that were in some way, shape, or form an inventory cycle counter or a customer service rep or pick, packing, shipping in a warehouse, and a lot were delivery drivers as well. They can relate to our customers, mm-hmm. and they can relate to the people they're interacting with on the final mile side. So I think relatability is key. And I think that's why, when we interact with the customers, there is that level of respect that, hey, we've got the 55 years behind us. Once they hear a story and they know that most of us and most of the company are service providers, and that's quote unquote most of our, call it love language, right? Acts of service. there's something to be said about that, but there's also something to be said about being able to relate to the people that you're working with, from an honest, a level of realness, right? I know, prior to this, you sent a list of questions of things we might talk about, and I kind of struggle, like, man, do I look at this list? Do I prepare myself, or do I want to have a natural conversation, right? And doing no prep and having that natural course of conversation, hopefully you can feel that, right? Because we're genuine, right? We're just like our customers, and we all put our pants on the same way. The difference is we have a different set of standards for us based off of what our customers are asking us to do, right? And that's the only difference, right?
100%. Don't even worry about the questions. I don't even know. That's the one thing I send question to kind of prep people, but I honestly don't even know if we talk about half the questions that I might ask. It's all about it being natural. I think that's the most important for sure. And what you said, I think, ties so beautifully into my next question. But what would make Regal, or what makes Regal different than other service providers and 3PLs? And why do you think a customer should choose you guys?
That's a good question, right? And that's something that you always have to ask yourself, right? And it's that reflection point. And I'm going to use some trucker mentality, right? And it's you're looking in the rearview mirror, right? It's that reflection point, right? You're driving ahead, things are going great. There's no traffic up front, right? But you're still looking in your mirrors, right? You're still seeing what happened or what's changed behind you. And I think one of the biggest differences that we hear from our customers is that we reflect. Right, we go back in, we talk to our customers, and it's relating. Right, it's some of the things, and we'll get into technology here in a little bit, but it's us getting to know our customers, right? Getting to know their business, what makes them successful, but also what would put them in a position to where they're not going to be successful, so we can avoid it, and then getting to know them even more, right? And I think that when you build that relationship from that level of service, customers do appreciate that, right? There's other customers that you're going to work with differently based off of how they want to interact and different ways of working, right? So you have your relationships are a little bit different, but your approach is the same. I think the other piece is beyond the relatability, beyond the history of service, behind also I didn't mention this before, with Regal Logistics having probably one of the lowest chargeback rates in the industry from a retail compliance standpoint. Everything counts, right? But it's the investment in technology, right? Being able to have developers on site in our buildings where the action happens. If a customer is asking for something, right? Let's just say a customer needs a custom logo, or they need a custom label, or they need a barcode somewhere, and it's one thing to do something behind a screen. But our developers, they can go down to the warehouse floor and go talk to the manager that's running the site and say, I have this question that a customer's asking. I don't quite understand. Help me understand what this looks like from an operative review. Or it's, hey, I have something I need to test. Let's go see what this looks like on a pallet, right? You can't get that from a sofa, right? You can't get that from a location that's not located in a warehouse. And I know that remote work and hybrid work is it's a thing, right? We all appreciate it. We've all done it some way, shape, or form. I've loved being able to work remotely and get some laundry done and prep dinner and do all that good stuff. But that's right. We all have, right? But being able to have our developers and our tech team in our buildings is key, right? Because that's where the action happens. So I will say that while a lot of people are investing in different types of technology and different bolt-on packages and different cloud-based software and just insert thing here, right? A lot of our technology that we use and operate, it's proprietary, right? We try to create something, we try to break it first before we deploy. We do a lot of UAT testing, and I think that outside of just the low levels of retail chargebacks, high levels of retail compliance, kind of the history behind what we do at Regal Logistics, and how excited we get about service, that's 90% of it, right? That's all the tactical stuff that you plan for, you're good at, right? That's game day. The other 10% are those inputs. It's gonna be the technology side as a tool, and I think that again, being able to have and know that there's an investment in technology to be able to have custom software for a customer, or a custom routing guide, or get ahead from a intuitive aspect to be able to do some reporting for our customers to help them get ahead of and see things ahead of maybe what they can't see for themselves, is part of the technology, right? And that's why having that investment engineered in-house is something that we take pride in, right? Because it's where technology meets supply chain, right?
Yeah, 100%. You were opening the door to my question in technology, so that's great. But how has technology changed the way that Regal operates over the past few years? And, you know, what role does automation play in your facilities today?
You know, that's a question that gets asked a lot of times, right? Especially with RFPs, right? And having even with WearMatch, having a great partner like you and your company, and with Ben and with Ryan and even Matt, you know, having opportunities that come our way, a lot of the questions talk about technology, right? What type of investments are you making in technology? What is technology? And I think that's one of the first questions. There's some RFPs and some customers that ask us those questions in general, right? Some because they just generally they don't know, or they want to know what it is, or some are very specific with, hey, we've got this requirement that needs XYZ technology. Cool. Can we accommodate? Is this something that we can actually do? Is it something that we are actually doing, right? And if we can't, we can't, right? We look at every single opportunity, right? But I think it goes back to it depends, right? What type of technology the customer's talking about. In a former life, you know, being on the operator side and being a wholesaler, you know, coming from a building that's 1 million square feet with, you know, 10 miles of conveyor systems and thousands of scanners and robots, you know, that's different than what I'm doing today. That's also a different scope, right?
Yeah.
We have that level of ability to understand how that operates and able to do that for our customers if that's a requirement, right? The difference in technology today being that we have, you know, thousands of customers with thousands of SKUs, and every SKU being different, right? It can be a SKU as small as a pen, right? As small as a washer for a widget, to something as big as, you know, a 53-foot trailer, right? Or whatever the case may be. There's so much in between. So automation is very difficult to scale when you have different sizes of packages that you're bringing in and taking out. Where automation comes into play with most 3PL service providers is it's your back office, right? It's your inventory. It's making sure that all of your inputs to a process are accurate, right? You know, one of the things, you know, I did mention this before, also a professor at the local university, but one of the things we talk about, and this is more lean and Six Sigma methodology, it's taking a look at what the word SIPOC is, right? SIPOC is basically your supplies, your inputs, your processes, your outputs, and then the customer, right? And if you bundle your inventory or your process or your transactions that you're required to take in from your customer, whether it be via email or Excel upload or API or EDI or insert acronym here, right? That framework is constant, right? And if those don't match, it's going to be off, right? And so from an automation standpoint, the more that you can automate the technology of your inputs to get to an output for your customer, the more streamlined you're going to be. And we're not talking about like replacing humans or replacing jobs. We're talking about, hey, how do we ensure that the information inputs are needed and accurate to produce this thing, this output, right? And inside between, when you're using the SIPOC, you know, abbreviation, you know, in between that I and the O, it's the P, right? It's the process. So what process is there? And those are very important understanding, right? It's like baking a cake, right? You know, you got bakers that bake cake and you've all these different ingredients, right? It's so easy: flour, water, mix it, you can bake it, right? If those were just the two ingredients, that's not gonna be a great tasting cake, right? That's gonna be like a cracker, right? That's not gonna taste good at all. But a good cake, right? And I like cake, right? You got flour, you got water, you got sugar, you got cinnamon, you got all your flavors, you get all these different things, and there's a method behind it, right? The end result, the output's going to be a great tasting cake, right? Your inputs are going to be the ingredients and those things that you have to make that cake. But what's in the middle, and I'm sorry, that's the best analogy that I can come up with, because somebody over here is eating a piece of carrot cake, so I
I'm
walk the line
craving
by with it.
cake now.
It's the process, right? It's the recipe, right? And I think that from an AI standpoint and technology standpoint, that's where that focus is going to be behind that, right? Because that's something you can scale. You can scale the process because your inputs are always going to be different. Your outputs are always going to be different, right? Because nothing's the same. But your process, if you can automate that and do a check and balance and have that be your point of differentiation, which I think it is for us, I know it is for us, then that's kind of the value proposition for partnering with a company like Regal Logistics, because we understand the retail compliance, we understand pick, pack, shipping, we understand everything that needs to happen to get a container from the ocean port to the shelf of a retailer. And then the next step of that is the input based off the customer requirement. If we understand what they want and what they're going to provide and what they need on the outside of that, right, as the output, then our software, our tools, our AI, our technology that we use to process those things is what's going to be kind of what sets us apart, right? And so I'm not sure if I answered your question. You got me excited talking about cake.
It's okay.
But, yeah.
I love that analogy. I think that was really good. I wish AI could give me a piece of cake right now. That would be a really fantastic evolution of AI. And I know what I'm having for dessert later to go find it. But talking about AI, I think we're very much on the same wavelength here because you keep mentioning something that was exactly my next question. So that's fantastic. But, you know, everyone's talking about AI. It's topic of conversation, especially in our industry right now. I think there's a lot of excitement, nervousness, uncertainty. Where do you think it will have the biggest impact on logistics in the next coming years?
Yeah, that's man, that could be another discussion, right, that we have. But, you know, I will say, you know, being an elder millennial myself, right, I'm also in the building where the action happens, where we have our development team and sit around some developers and computer engineers and software engineers. And I myself have learned things over the last 3 months that were different than 3 months prior to that, right? I never knew what a language learning model was. I never knew what the difference between, you know, AEO, SEO, SEO, you know, all these different acronyms, and then, you know, different tools that are out there with AI, and you've got different languages with an AI. You know, you got Fable, you've got Opus, you've got Sonnet. You're right, insert whatever it is here. Man, I can geek out.
I would love you right now.
Right?
You're way better versed than I am. I love it.
But no, that's good. But I think that the next wave of AI, look, AI is a tool, right? I think that naturally most service providers that have been around the block a little bit, and I'm gonna make myself sound old, but I'm not, right? But I recently hit UNC status according to my tech guys that work across the hall from me, whatever that means. But it's trust but verify, right? There's an old school method of being able to work off of a sheet of paper and check and understand, hey, I've got a pick, pack, and ship, right? And then from there, there's technology that you use to be able to get check digits. And then you have different aliases within a widget, and you scan and you understand whether or not you have a variance or not, right? All these different tools that have gone from pen and paper with a checklist down to scanning, down to check digits, down to RFID, and even RF to make sure that what's coming in the building and what's leaving the building is either pre-ASN or ASN. Like, there's all these things that are as a result of it. Where AI comes into play as a tool, no different than what your recording is and taking notes. AI is going to take, I think you're using Otter or whatever the case, you're using whatever it is, Fathom. It's going to recap the call, right? And it's going to help you be more efficient, right? And it's not going to replace thought. It's not going to replace the methodology. It might give you suggestions as a tool. So even on my side, right, as a professor, a lot of people that in that world, you know, they don't like when their students use AI, right? I embrace it, right? It's a tool. If it can help you formulate an idea and get you to an answer better while you still use your own words, why not, right? That's the future. I think the old way of thinking is, hey, we're not going to use these tools, right? Why do you think Excel came into play, right? Excel came into play to replace the calculator, right? From a business machine standpoint, right? At some way, shape, or form, that was the original form of AI, right? You take a look at APIs and EDIs, right? EDI was created back by IBM back in the 70s, right? Back in the whole AS400 days, the green screens. You go to any Costco in America today, you see the system they're operating to place orders. It's an old, in some cases, it's a DOS screen that works off of old technology EDI, right? It's not broke, right? But where AI comes into play, and I know I'm going on a rant here, where AI comes into play, it helps you make those decisions, or it helps you do a sanity check, a gut check based off of what you're trying to conclude, right? And so I will say that, again, as you use AI technology and you have AI agents, where it's going to come into play is going back to inventory, like we talked about. Hey, we have X customer that's inventory levels increased or they decreased, right? Why, right? This is an exception. Go ask the customer, right? Being able to trigger an email saying, hey, Tom, customer XYZ has a 30% increase in inbound container volume coming from South Korea, right? Whereas typically volume comes in from Vietnam, or it comes in from Lang Chabang, or it comes in from Ningbo, right? Mm-hmm. Those are those inputs that AI can help you identify as an assistant, right? As people call it bots or agents, but it's a tool, right? So going back to, and I'm nerding out on this a little bit, is because it's exciting with the power of AI, right? With everything being connected via an EDI or API feed, if a customer has AI capability or that planning capability, and they're providing you information in advance, and they're sharing their production plan schedule, their sales cycle schedule, right? And again, this goes back to kind of understanding your customer, right? You understand your customer, you understand their business as part of your scheduled business reviews. You're not just asking, hey, what can we do for you tomorrow, right? Do you have any more volume for us? It's, hey, what does this look like part of your sales cycle for next year, right? You end up becoming part of their team, and you ask those questions, right? Give us your next 13 weeks of forecast. Hey, this is what the last 13 weeks. Hey, Tom, Regal Logistics, what do you think about this, right? And when the customers start to ask you about, hey, what are your thoughts? Hey, based off of the modeling and based off Regal Command and based off our tools, hey, we would recommend this, or hey, why don't you look at this, right? And once you meet that status and that level with your customer, that's where that real trust starts to form, right? And again, one way to get there faster is through AI, right? And so I know AI means something different to everybody, but at least here at Regal Logistics, when we take a look at those inputs and those outputs in that process, using AI to get to the information faster, and use it from an accuracy standpoint, to help trust but verify, it's huge, right? It is huge.
Yeah, I think that there's so much that's going to happen with it soon. And I think that if we're using it properly, it's such a tool that can actually help us in the industry so much. And I think that you guys are clearly doing a very good job at utilizing it. Your knowledge on it is extensive. I would say it's way more than most people, but that's a very good thing, because I think that, obviously a company that's been around for 55 years, a lot of multi-generational companies, sometimes they're still stuck in more of an older mentality, which is good, I think, when it comes to like relationship bases. But I think when it comes to facilitating the way we work, there are a lot of good improvements that can be made with the AI that just, we don't need to be doing Excel sheets by hand anymore. Like, why are we wasting a day to do Excel? Like, completely agree with you on that.
But I would also play devil's advocate, right? Because there could be some clients that are out there, right? And I don't want to scare anyone away, right? Because that's not how we live and die by, right? Being able to look, feel, act, and emulate our customers is big, right? Even here within the organization and the building that I'm in today, right? We've got boomers, we've got Gen Xers, we got millennials, we got, what do you consider a Zennial? A Zennial? I don't know, whatever the next that level of demographic is, right? We work across different people, right? And I think it's what makes people different, is what makes us it's a different recipe, it's a different ingredient, right? To that. So I will say that a lot of us still use Excel, right? I still use Excel, right? But if I have a complex task that I'm trying to verify and do a sanity check, it's, right, let me go run this through a model to see what this actually looks like. And again, it's a tool. So if there are people out there that are scared of AI, it's like, hey, there's some adaptation that comes as a result of it. That's fine. But if you're a retailer or a consumer that, like, man, this is just kind of out of my league, that's fine too, right?
Yeah.
We still work off of Excel. We still work off of email. We still have a fax machine, right? We got a fax the other day. I'm like, what? This thing still works, right? So
Yeah.
again, we want to be easy to do business with for our customers, and so, but what we also want to do is we want to be able to not be stuck. And we've all heard kind of Blockbuster versus Netflix, right? We don't want to be the Blockbusters of the day where we don't adapt or evolve. We want to evolve for our customers, and we want to evolve for those customers that need that level of evolution within what they do. But we also want to have that level of consistency and knowing where our roots are if customers aren't ready to do that yet. And that's where we come into play, right? We can help them validate whether or not technology is right for them, right? And I think that's one of the benefits and values of having a 3PL and a logistics service provider. Look, at the end of the day, we want our customers to be successful, right? And if our customers think that they can go to self-distribution and do stuff on their own, great, right? We were part of your success, right? You may have won, 10 awards under our leadership and under our guidance. And if you're at a point to where your brand has grown and maybe you were Chloe's Cola, right? And now you turn into like the Coca-Cola, right? There's a point where you do things on your own, right? And so what I will say is there's a decision point with every single customer with what they do. And I think the benefit of using a 3PL and a logistics service provider like Regal Logistics is you really can have your cake and eat it too, right? You see, I threw the cake in there. I wasn't even planning on that.
My goodness, I really need to get a piece of cake.
But again, you have options, right? And whether you're a customer big that understands that from an AI and technology standpoint, or you're a customer that's just starting and you have one container a year and you're trying to get out there, right? Like it's not up to us to decide who's going to be a successful brand or an item, right? But what it is up to us, what's up to us is our level of effort to make sure we treat that customer the same as another customer because of whatever they're trying to do. If we can be part of their success story, man, like that's where things happen, right? And because change is imminent, right? So again, kind of wrapping things up, going back, you got me on a rant again. Logistics is exciting. Supply chain's exciting. It's constantly changing. It's an opportunity to solve problems and provide solutions. But man, when you compare that to technology and getting to see like a customer's growth strategy and what they're going to be about, like that's exciting, right? That's where your level of effort, your care factor kind of just kick in.
You mentioned something that I thought was interesting regarding like brands and 3PLs. Working with so many retail brands and things, I know you definitely have your opinion on certain things regarding how people operate and do things. So I would love to know, what's one thing that you find brands should stop doing that makes their 3PL's job harder?
We're going to go back to a play on AI, right? It's AI requires information. It requires the input. I think that I'm not going to say there's a whole lot of holding of information, but I think it's timing of information when it's available. I think that if a brand can establish that ways of working with their LSP, and if that brand can help get ahead of the game and have that planning session ahead of time, that's going to help them formulate a different pathway forward. So I wouldn't say that it's more of like holding something back or they could do differently or reframing that question in any way. But I think that, again, the more information you have, it's no different than inventory, right? You have inventory of an item that you need to make sure is accurate. Information is inventory, right? You take that information, you have that as part of your notes, your SOPs, how things are supposed to happen. Some things can't happen overnight, right? That's reality, right? You can't get a shipment from Quebec to Tacoma in an hour, right? Not yet, at least, right? But there's always something that relies on something else to happen before something else happens, right? So going back to your question, it's making sure you have the information and you're asking questions. I think most good operators have some level of intuition, but intuition isn't what's going to make your customer succeed. Maybe fail because you thought something was supposed to happen a certain way. So you have to be curious. You have to ask questions. And I think that as a customer and a potential client, those potential clients have to be comfortable with logistics service providers like us asking questions, right? Being a little bit invasive, right? Like, we want to know your business, right? Because we have a lot of stake at too, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have 55 years behind us. You may be a brand that's a startup that has 1 year behind you, right? And not to say that we're more important, and not to say that somebody else has more to lose, but there's also that reputation at stake. And so if you have, so as a retailer or a brand, you have to be okay with your LSP and your 3PL being able to ask you those detailed questions. That way they can understand the why. And I think the more curious you are, the better perspective you have, right? Going back to the whole truck driver knowing how to operate with somebody on the dock, because you know, right? And that's getting to know your customer.
100%. And I think you led beautifully kind of into my closing question, but if a brand listening today could take away one lesson from Regal Logistics that could help improve their supply chain, what would you want that lesson to be?
I think the lesson would be that, look, we've succeeded and we failed and we've or made mistakes, or bumped some bruises along the way over the last 55 years, right? We're not perfect, right? I'm not going to sit here and say we're perfect. We're really good, right? I think that a lot of companies out there, brands, retailers, 3PLs, they focus on 100% A plus. You go back to grade school, you got your 190, 80, 70, A, B, C, D, right? There's a lot of energy and effort, right, to get from being at a 98% to 100% perfect every single time, right? But if you could be really, really good and be consistent and be at a 97, 98% operating, even 99%, right? That's not perfect, but it's really solid, right? The higher the better. If you can be really, really good consistently, and you're at a 99% operating ratio, whatever that is for whatever that thing is, and that level of energy to get from the 99% to 100% is exhaustive, right? Unless we're robots and machines and we have full automation with what we do, that's achievable, right? But we still have the human element involved. And so I would say that although we're humans, we use AI technology to help us make sure that those processes are damn near perfect, right? I think understanding that you're still dealing with human beings that hold yourself accountable, I think that's a difference, right? We understand, right? We're not too big to say, hey, no, we can't do that, or we need 10 different levels of approvals, right? If a customer comes to me and says they want something or they need something, okay, I'm walking down the hall. I report to the president. He's the decision maker, right? I don't need to put a business case together other than, hey, customer says this is what they need and this is the why and this is how they get there. Then some of the questions we ask is, okay, great. What does this mean for the customer? Is it going to help them succeed? Is it going to help them be successful? If it's going to make them be successful, and since we have 55 years of experience, then we can say, hey, is that something that's a repeatable process that we can use to scale across all of our other customers, right? That way, at least we have that toolbox in our belt, right? And the difference is we're not going to hide behind a website. We're not going to hide those things. We're going to bring this to you as options, right? And so for anybody listening out there, right, that really cares about having a company like Regal Logistics that is excited about logistics like I am today and maniacal about service levels, that's us, right? And being able to adapt and pivot and evolve, that's us too, right? Because things change. And no knock to the bigger players that are out there, the Fortune 500s, the publicly traded companies, or even the ones that are smaller that have 20,000 square feet just starting, right? You start somewhere. The difference is with us, we're naturally curious. We want to know the customers, going back to we want to know their business, what's going to make them win or fail, and then we want to get to know them more, right? And I think those small steps is what's going to make the difference between us and maybe our competition. And in some cases, people will appreciate that. In some cases, they won't, right? It's just not a fit, right? And that's okay too, right? But at the end of the day, if we can build our network amongst other logistics service providers, other people that are in our space, other partners that you use through WareMatch, and if anybody got out of the call, regardless if it's a prospective client or a brand or even a competitor, right? Hey, let's just help people out, right? We're trying to help our brands out. Let's help make this ecosystem kind of run smoother, right? And the better that another operator operates, the better that we operate. And then at the end of the day, everyone starts holding themselves to a higher level, a higher standard, and the customer expects that, which means it forces us to get better, and that's okay, right? And we want to do better, and we want to be improving every single way that we can. So I just thank you again for having us today and letting us talk about logistics. I never knew logistics was going to be so exciting at 12 o'clock on a Friday for an hour.
I know. It's like 2 p.m. here, and I'm like, this is the best way to close out before a weekend. And I'm so thankful that you came on, Thomas. You have so much insight on so many different topics. I definitely think we could even do a second part of this episode. There's so much to talk about. And I'm so excited to see what's next for Regal. You guys have been such an amazing partner to WearMatch so far. It's been a pleasure to work with you guys since you guys came on. And anyone watching who's interested in Regal services, we're going to add all the information in the bio as well as their WearMatch profile, which we suggest you go visit and just see if it's a partner that could work for your needs. And Thomas, I thank you so much again for coming on the podcast, and stay tuned for the next episode, guys.
Awesome. Thanks for having us. Have a good day.